We're a little down, but we appreciate you guys being with us. I don't know if we got some people out of town for Thanksgiving or just not able to get out, but we appreciate you being here. Like Matt said last week, we're just rather than trying to pick up where he left off, we're going to go to lesson number 8. We're going to do lesson 8, Jake and Kenny. So grab your number 8 right there. Your mom needs one. Oh, Sid needs one. Oh, my. Who needs a number 8? Need about 3 of them. He's going to come back and do 6 and 7. He's going to pick them back up next week. That's just. I didn't argue. I said that's fine. He said it'd just be easier to do 8, and I said that's fine. I can do 8. So it's hard to find good help, you know. Well, he did have a car wreck, you know. So hopefully he's watching. I got a lot of problems, and we don't have enough time, Sid. So, but yeah, we're going to do number 8, and then Matt will drop back next week and finish up. I think he's got part of 6 to finish up, and he's got 7 to do. So I doubt that he gets through all that next week. But anyway, that's on him. Most of our text for this evening is taken out of Romans chapter 1, verses 28 and 29. We got one more coming in, so we'll wait a second. If you want to turn over there, we're going to read some of those verses out of Romans chapter 1. Tonight, we're going to talk mostly about the definitions of these words that we read out, that we read of in Romans chapter 1, verses 28 and 29. Some interesting thoughts, I'm sure, will probably come up out of some of these words. You may not understand some of them. When I started looking at them, it's like, oh, okay. I thought I knew what it meant, but it meant something else. So, which I'm not good at that anyway. But anyway, before we get into it, let's have a word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this day that you've granted to us, another opportunity to assemble and to study your word. And we just pray that you bless us as we go through this study, that we're able to look at these things and apply these things to our everyday lives to where we can be better servants for you and live righteous in your sight. We pray, Father, for those that are sick and going through so many different things and battles with their health, and we ask that you would bless them and watch over them and help them as only you can. We thank you so much for Jesus and his blood that was shed on that cross for the forgiveness of our sins. In his name we pray, and amen. I'll do my best reading this. I wear bifocal contacts. I've had them for several years, and if the light isn't just right, and if I don't stand just the right way, and hold my mouth the right way, so it's hard to tell what might come out of here, but we'll... 28 and 29 is, like I said, is primarily most of our text, but let's back up and let's start at about 24. The whole context of this is the wrath of God and seeing his invisible attributes and how we should know that God exists just through his creation and everything. And then he goes into verse 21, how their futile thoughts, their foolish hearts were darkened. They profess to be wise, they become fools. So in verse 23, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. So they made idols, which we've been talking about that some. Therefore God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. And for this reason God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due. And now comes the text of our study. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful. Wow. He just lays it all out right there. These are some corrupt, debased people that he's describing. And he says, it got to the point where God just let them go. We've seen people like that. They just keep wanting to go down a certain path, and no matter what you do for them, no matter how you try to help them, there's a certain point in time where you just have to say, I've done all I can do for you. Go for it. And that's where God's at. You just let them go. 32, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. We got to be careful what we do and how we treat some of these things, don't we? Because when we kind of can more or less, we don't condone it. We don't come right out and say, well, okay, it's okay what you do. But when we don't, now you correct me, maybe I'm not sure exactly where you're going with the thought, but I think the thought was, if we don't stand up for the truth, we might as well be doing these things as well. If we don't point out what's going on, we might as well be doing it. That's basically what that's saying, because we're condoning it. So we have to be careful of how we approach things like this. What I thought we would do, now you can have any comment that you want to have, but I thought what we'd do would be to go through all of these. It's asking for the definition of these words. And we're not going to go through all of these that we just read. Some of them get picked up in lesson 9. But I thought we would go through the definitions. And then once we got over into the second page, we can start discussing things a little bit more thoroughly. Because it kind of goes into a few other things. We can bring out some other thoughts. Like I said, now, if you want to throw in something, go right ahead. But anyway, so the first one says, define the sin of fornication. It is blank sex. It's unlawful, okay? It's sexual relations without being married to a person. But it also, and we'll see this in a minute, goes into other things. Define the sin of wickedness. It's given over to lawlessness, okay? No law, no respect for the law. Define the sin of covetousness. Blank desire to, greedy desire to have more. Exactly right, okay? It's that greed, okay? Have that kind of that thought when we go to the other page. Define the sin of maliciousness is a blank desire to blank others. A vicious desire to harm others. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. That's interesting to me when you kind of think about that. Define the sin of envy. A blank or ill blank toward others. Ill will, okay? Ill will toward others. Possessions. What I heard? Good fortune, success. That's what I had down. Success, okay? Sin of envy, ill will towards others, success, okay? Define murder, to blank kill another. Unlawfully, okay? Willfully, that's what I had in there, or willingly. Willingly kill another, okay? Then the sin of strife. What is strife? It's a quarrel, yeah. That's one I thought I knew the definition to, and I didn't, I don't guess. Okay? Quarrel. Sin of strife, quarreling, arguments. Define sin of deceit. False impressions, yep. And then the last one, define sin of malignity. To think the blank of others. Yeah, to think the worst of others. Yeah, and that's, I think, I remember somebody just the other day, I don't remember if it was Matt or somebody just used that example the other day about somebody seeing the car. No, I don't remember where I heard it. Anyway, a lady was condemning a man, I think he was a Christian, member of the church, because his truck was parked several days in a row in front of a beer joint. Well, so without knowing the situation, his car had been broken down, was why, and he couldn't get it towed, couldn't get it fixed. But it had been there several days. So this lady saw it and started to spread gossip about his car being broke down in front of the beer joint. The man didn't say a word to her, didn't do anything about it. The next night, he went and parked his car in front of her house and left. Didn't stay, just let the car sit in front of her house. So he got his way back. But anyway, I thought that was pretty good. I would never think of that kind of stuff. So now we're going to kind of talk a little bit more in depth on these sins that were listed in verses 28 and 29. We're going to look at some examples in the Bible. This study we've been talking about, it's been the devil, sin, and hell. We looked at the devil early on, which we talked about this last year when we were discussing angels. We talked about how the devil was a created being. The Bible doesn't give us a lot of details about him as far as we know that he was created during creation. We don't know what transpired, what made him become the way he is now, because God made all things good. So we know at some point the devil actually was good. So we don't know, when this took place exactly or why it took place. And obviously angels went along with him as well, some of the angels. But we talked about him. We've talked about sin. We've looked at a lot of things in the Old Testament about sin. Once we get into in December, the last few lessons, we'll get pretty in depth into hell and talk about some things with that. But tonight, like I said, we're looking at the definitions of sin out of the New Testament. And number one says the sins listed in Romans 29 through 31 deal primarily with the sinful condition of the blank world. I kind of had a little trouble filling that one in. I'm not sure if I got the right answer or not. Carnal world, okay. Material world, okay. I like all of those. Whole world, yeah. I put entire world, and then I also thought, well, maybe it's talking about the lost world, because some of these early Christians in Corinthians, Paul tells them and says, such were some of you, until they became Christians, they repented and confessed and changed their ways. So I think there's a lot of different things that could go in there. Okay, so the first one right off the get-go is fornication. Define the sin of fornication, which we talked about that. It's unlawful sex. It's a relationship between, it used to be between a man and a woman, but he even talks about that. It's women and women, men and men. It's any kind of an unlawful relationship between two individuals, whether they're married or unmarried. Now, when we think of them being married, then when that spouse goes and is with another person that is not their spouse, and we're into an adulterous situation there. But fornication takes in the idea with a woman and a woman, and a man, or any kind of perversion that you really want to think about.
All encompassing.
Yeah. And that's kind of what the next question says. The word of fornication is what kind of word, which includes the sins of adultery, homosexual, lesbian. So what kind of word do you think that would be? Pardon me? A general word? An inclusive word, okay? An encompassing word. Yeah, this was another one. I wasn't sure what. I wrote down compound, but after I did that, I thought, that's not that. That's not what that means, or it's not the meaning of a compound word. Yeah, it's encompassing. I think that inclusive. I like that. I like that thought. You know, and if you picked up on verse 28, it talks about, and again, we already mentioned this once, but God gives people over to a reprobate mind when they get in these situations. When all they want to do is continually do these things, there comes a point in time when God just, they're allowed to go do what they want to do. A debased mind, a reprobate mind. That's what that talks about there. Number 4 says we are told to flee. Okay. We're to flee, and then we're to abstain from it and to avoid it. Yeah. I had a hard time finding that when I had to go find my actual King James version to get it. Because if you read the New King James, it doesn't have anything that fit in there at all. Well, what's he talking? I even thought, well, maybe he's got the verse wrong. So I looked at 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 2. I looked at verse 8 and verse 2. I went to 2 Corinthians 7 and verse 2. So that's when I went and got the regular King James, and King James says avoid. So we're told to flee these things, abstain from it, and to just flat out avoid it. And here's the reason why. Number 5, because of fornication, the blank of God comes upon this world. The wrath. When you participate in these things, you're subjecting yourself to the wrath of God.
What about these? I've learned a new word.
Binary.
And I asked some adventure, and they told me. And I'm not, if I'm talking to a woman, and she's trying to be a man, I'm not going to, and then she's going to get mad if I say, I'm not going to do that.
I know.
I'm not going to go along with it.
Yep.
Because your kids have trouble with school now.
Well, and that goes back to what we just said a little bit ago when Waldo had us read verse 32. When we don't point that out, not necessarily pointing it out, but when we try to go along with what they want us to. Yeah. Well, but at the same time, if we don't more or less point that out, then we're doing what 32 tells us. Exactly. We're told to expose it. We're told not to participate in it. We're told to abstain from it. So, yeah. I know it. They're between a rock and a hard spot. They really are.
Jesus Christ addressed the devil with a temptation. He said, "It is written." Genesis 1:27. God created man and woman. He created people ever given.
No, I mean, yeah, the very first chapter of the Bible, it's spelled out right there. Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, I don't get it. Anyway, it's all evil, right? Exactly. Yeah.
I don't think God will have trouble defining who his people are on the last day.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No amount of makeup's going to hide it, is it? Plastic surgery or whatever you want to do.
That's just like people saying, and I don't mean any good disrespect or any thing other than, I've heard people say, "Oh, we'll be cremated that way, God can't find me."
God can't find you. Yeah. Yep. Yep. That's just like I'm sure a lot of you have taken a chainsaw and cut a tree or cut a piece of wood with a chainsaw or even any kind of a saw, and you have all that powdery sawdust. God's the only one that could take all that sawdust or what's left over and actually put it back to that tree. We sure can. So, yeah, cremating's not going to do you any good, is it? You can't hide from God. I don't recall the exact verses, but it talks about no matter how deep in the sea you are or the cave or the mountain or anything like that. Yep. All right. The next one we're going to talk about wickedness. Define the sin of wickedness. We said that was what? Given over to lawlessness, okay? You just have no respect for the law. Basically, it's what it is. Doesn't matter what the law says, you have no respect for it. It means nothing to you. It does. That's what I notice it more in, I guess, famous people, sports people, movie stars, things like that. And I like Tiger Woods. I thought he was really amazing or whatever. But, he did some things here later in his life. It's like, I can do that because I'm Tiger Woods. What the law says doesn't really apply to me. And you see that with a lot of, or I think you do, with a lot of famous people, with a lot of, or what we think of famous people. They don't mean a whole lot to me. But
speeding.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. None of us are above the law, and I know, and I'm guilty of it. I'm still guilty of it. I work on it, but I'm still guilty of it. Even the speed limit. If it's 55 and we're doing 56, we're breaking the law. And I struggle with that. I know they do, and that doesn't. But anyway, no respect for the law, and that's what this is talking about. Wickedness. Wickedness is also, number 7, wickedness is also evil, blank and blank. Yeah, and actually I had one, and I looked at it, and it didn't really help me a lot. I actually Googled it on my phone with Strong's, and that helped some, but what does make sense to you to go in there? Wickedness is also evil, blank, and blank. Thoughts and actions, okay? Yeah, you're getting ahead of us. That's number 8. So. But no, that's pretty much what I put down when you looked at Strong's. It talked about having an evil disposition, which is thoughts, and malice. Having that malice, that evil thought against somebody else that you want to do them harm, which we're going to talk about that in just a second too. But yeah, number 8, the world of Noah. And since Waldo brought that up, let's turn over and read that verse, because that's an interesting verse that I think that we ought to be aware of it. Sometimes we read through that and we just kind of skip over that a little bit. But turn over to chapter 6 and verse 5 of Genesis. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The thoughts of his heart, the man. Man's thoughts at this point in time were constantly on evil. They didn't think about anything else other than evil. That's hard for me to grasp. Because, when you think about your day and you go throughout your day and you're doing this and you're doing that, and you go from one thing to another, to another. I mean, what you get up in the morning, when you get up in the morning and you're thinking about something, are you necessarily thinking about that same thing that night? No. But their thoughts were on doing evil from the time they got up until the time they went to bed. No. Very little. No. Yeah.
I just looked up Strong's in the New Testament definition: wickedness, malignity, evil in thought and purpose. That's basically it.
Yeah.
We have a Hebrew word.
Yeah. But a wicked person sins against God all the time, and he's never sorry for the sins that he commits. I'm just reading some of this out of the handbook. If you live your life in wickedness, God will abandon you. He will leave you and let the devil have you. We just looked at those verses out of verse 32 there. And a good example of wickedness was what we just talked about, was Noah, and how their thoughts were continually on this evil. Going on down to covetousness. What did we say that was? A greedy desire to have more. Out of the Old Testament, you'll remember the story of Jericho when they marched around the walls of Jericho, and we have the story of Achan. You remember what Achan did at the end? What were they supposed to do? Once the walls fell, what were they supposed to do to everything in Jericho? Yeah. Everything, everyone. There was nothing to be left, wasn't it? Yeah. So what did Achan do? He coveted things, didn't he? He took gold, silver, and some clothing, fancy clothing. Yeah. What happened to Achan after that? Him and his whole family, his entire family, even all of his animals, his entire everything that he had was destroyed.
Go back.
Go ahead.
Noah and his family. How was it possible for him to raise his family in that condition? How could you interact in a world where everything's nasty, dirty, evil? How could you stay unspotted?
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. Yeah.
For an adult, yeah. How would you raise kids up into this that they wouldn't be worried about? That's just.
Yeah.
That's hard to look at.
It is. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. They were busy helping him build the ark, I guess. Maybe. Yeah. 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 Well, I think a lot of it too, probably, like you said, the time they lived in, they were more of a family unit, everybody had to work together just to make the family survive. I mean, you guys came from 9, 10, 22 kids, however many you all have. I mean, it's unbelievable. Every time I talk to you, it seems like you get more, but no. But you know what I'm saying? You know, that family was a unit on their farm or whatever, so you didn't have a lot of interaction with the outside world. That would be maybe one way that I would think maybe Noah was able to keep it. But yeah, you stayed busy.
And I don't remember anybody hardly watching TV in that.
Children were not disobedient or taught disobedience to the already.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, today. Do what? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you didn't have any choice other than to do it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
But then when we're talking about that, Noah's, where were those parents taking care of their children? I mean, they didn't do their job, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I try to tell patients of mine who come in and they're having a hard time because of this world, but I keep saying, if you would start reading the Bible, you would find more peace because it always has been. Always has been evil.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
it's hard to believe when you just think Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives. That's the only people that were faithful. Everybody else.
If they did find women,
Mm-hmm.
let's not get too evil.
I don't know. Yeah.
Very hard to.
It is. Some interesting things that somewhere down the road, you know, hopefully we were able to learn some of that stuff. I mean, just like talking about the devil and his origin, what made him and the angels do what they did to turn, because they were good at one point, and to turn and to be like they are now. You know, be interesting question to be able to find out that answer. You know, what took place. But anyway, we're going down that rabbit hole a little bit. So we better move on, or we're going to be like Matt and not be able to finish. Anyway. Let's see. On number 10 on the next page, God forbids coveting our neighbor's blank, 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 or blank and blank. Basically everything. We are not to covet anything that anybody else has. Now, if Waldo goes and buys him a new car, is it all right to say, man, I like that new car. I wouldn't care to have a new car like Waldo's got. Is there anything wrong with that? No. Right. Exactly.
You don't want to have evil intent
Because he has one.
because
Exactly. Yep. Yep. And that's another one. Well, we get down to envy. That's what we're going to talk about here. Three examples of covetousness. Yeah, Achan, David with Bathsheba, and then Judas. That's the three. If you read those three verses, that's what those three are referencing. And all three of those, we could spend quite a while just talking about just the three of those. Maliciousness. Define the sin of maliciousness. What do we say that was? Yeah. You know, and these things, one kind of builds on another and leads to other sins.
And I put a little note on here. This really brings to mind a word that you maybe have heard and wonder what the heck does that mean? German word. It's called Schadenfreude.
No.
You know what I'm talking about. Schadenfreude is a German term that means that you get pleasure from seeing the misfortune of others.
Yeah.
Basically, maliciousness is sort of like Schadenfreude.
It's a vicious desire to harm others. It's not just a desire to see something happen to them. It's a vicious desire. I hope none of us ever have that. You know, we're to love one another.
It's not just the desire either, it's that.
It's active involvement, but it's amazing how people do get their. I describe it as get their jollies out of watching other stuff.
Well, you know, let's think about this for just a minute. You know, like I said, you know, some of these sins will lead into other sins. You know, so envy can lead into maliciousness. What happened in the Olympics? Bill's going to know this because I'm going to tell him, or he just knows. In 1994, Bill, 1994 Olympics, what happened? Who are two big players in the Winter Olympics? Anybody?
Oh, well, of course,
Nancy Kerrigan, Tonya Harding. Tonya Harding was so envious of Nancy Kerrigan that she had, what was her brother, wasn't that who it finally came out to be? Her husband, that's right. Attacked Nancy Kerrigan. Crazy that she was so envious and that she had that malicious desire to hurt her and wound up ruining her own self. I mean, I don't know what she's doing now, but I mean, for a long time, she couldn't get a job to, yeah. But to have that kind of desire to hurt somebody. All right. So it's a vicious desire. So in number 13, Esther chapter 3, we all know who that is. And then Acts 19, yeah. Two malicious men, Haman and then Demetrius the silversmith. And he was envious of what Paul and the other apostles were teaching because he was going to lose what? Yeah, he was a silversmith. He was going to lose their... Right. They're going to lose their income, weren't they? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Number 14. Would talebearers and gossipers fall into this category? Okay. Yeah. A gossip is somebody that not only is spreading a tale about somebody else, they're doing it in such a manner that their intent is to bring harm to somebody else. Like the man's truck, yeah. Yeah. Rather than trying to find out what was really going on, she just assumed what was going on, and there they went. So anyway, envy. Define the sin of envy. We talked about that being an ill will towards others' success. Wanting or being mad because they have something else. They're able to do other things. Their abilities are, you know, you see this in school a lot of times. You know, one kid's really good at math and the other kid's not good at math. So the one that's not good is envious of that person and will try to get the other one in trouble. Various things like that. You see it in the workplace all the time. Envy is painful or resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by another, joined with a desire to possess the same advantage. So examples of envy out of Mark chapter 15 and Genesis 37. So what was out of Mark 15? The chief priests. They were falsely, and Pilate was involved in that, falsely accusing Jesus. Okay, and then what's out of Genesis? Joseph's brothers. Boy, is that a story of envy? Wow. Can you imagine being so envious of your own brother? They tried to kill him first, throw him down that pit and everything, and then eventually sell him off to be a slave.
We use the term today that they were a dysfunctional family.
Yeah, I guess so. But again, that envy led to other things, almost led to murder of Joseph. And which is our next topic, murders. Define murder. Willfully taking another person's life. Yeah. Examples of the murders in Genesis 4, we all know who that is. Cain. And again, here is one sin leading to this. He was envious, then he was malicious towards Abel, and to the point that he finally killed him. Sin just keeps compounding itself. It keeps heaping it up on its top of each other. Okay, and then out of Matthew chapter 2, Herod, concerning who? The birth of Jesus. Okay, but he killed all the children, just thinking he could get to Jesus. If he killed all of them, he'd take care of him too. All right, we're going to have to hurry through these. I don't want to leave this hanging. Strife. We said that was quarreling. So number 20, examples of quarreling, however you say that. Genesis 13, who was quarrel? Who was doing that in Genesis 13? Bickering, yeah. Yeah. Yes, they're herdsmen. They were fighting over the land. They were fighting over, one's group of animals wasn't getting enough water, enough grass, blah, blah, blah. And how did Abraham handle that? What did he do? He let Lot choose, didn't he? Lot took the best, though, didn't he? But Abraham was okay. But it does say that they went away basically as friends after they did make that decision. But Abraham handled that the way we should handle things. Yeah, it was exactly. Yeah, it was their hired hands, I guess, if you want to say. Yeah. Okay. And then the second example out of 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Yeah, exactly. That's what I put down. The Corinthian brethren, the church of Corinth or whatever. Chloe's household had written a letter or got word to Paul that some of these things were going on, these contentions among them. They're quarreling among themselves. We have to try, and we're humans, so it's hard for us to do that, and we're not always capable of doing it sometimes, but we need to do our best not to quarrel, especially with one another. Live peaceably with all men. Hard to do, but it's something we need to work on. Deceit. Define the sin of deceit. We said that was a false impression. So 22, would allowing someone to believe something that is not true be an example of deceit? Yeah, sure it would be. But why, Sally? Yeah. Or we're letting them believe something that's a lie. We're withholding the truth when we do that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. When we looked at verse 32 in Romans chapter 1 again, it comes back to that. Not standing up for the truth, not acknowledging the sin that somebody is doing. Just like someone is a man that wants to be recognized as a woman and giving into that and calling that person a she instead of what they really are as a he. when we do that sort of a thing, we're actually condoning it. We're falling into that sin that it's talking about there in verse 32 about that condition.
I look at it as what happened in Colorado Springs. When they put all the memorials outside that building, thousands and thousands of people brought flowers and things. It's the same thing. They're uplifting that, I guess you might say.
Yeah.
Going along with it.
Yeah.
They're just guilty of the ones that are practicing.
Yep. That's right.
Well, it's kind of a tough one though, because, express that they being seen as unsensitive.
Yeah. You're in a no-win situation. That's kind of like what they, June and Linda both said about the kids today. You're between a rock and a hard spot. We got 1 minute. So examples of he's going to ring the bell. We have no minutes. So the examples there, we had Abraham lying about Sarah, and then we had Ananias and Sapphira. We've already talked about those in the past. And then malignity, real quick, was to think the worst of someone else. Okay, spite, mischievous. Paul said that love thinks no evil. That needs to be us. We need to think no evil about somebody. And then what do we mean when we use the term malignant?
Of course, a lot of times in a medical term, it's kind of death-producing.
It attaches. Yeah, it's a growth. Yeah. So that's kind of what I had. It's when you look at a definition in Webster, it talked about it being contriving, likely to rebel against God, an evil influence, or an effect, kind of like cancer. It's spread. Yeah. So, hey, we got through there. Thank you, guys. We'll let Matt pick up where he wants to pick up next week.